So it all started with a potato. A TikTok idea where you could grow a potato vine in your house just from a potato and a jar of water. Turns out my grandma had been secretly growing one in the corner of her living room, and she gave the plant to me. I named her Langit because I wanted her to grow to the heavens. She was thriving until she wasn't. But then my grandma revived her and gave her a good life outside, where she was meant to be. Then for some reason my mom decided to give me a pygmy date palm, and then it died. And then someone, I think Jerome, got me orchids, and it died too. And you'd think after all that I'd be done with plants. Heck to the frickin' no. I actually attempted to grow a potato vine from a glass of water. It didn't work. It rotted and the water stank so bad. I threw it outside in the middle of winter and then an animal stole it. And then somewhere in between all this, I end up having a farmer arc. Honestly, garden plants are so much easier than having plants indoor. Well, because plants are meant to be outdoor. All you gotta do is water them every day and fertilize every few weeks and bam, you got a salad. Okay, but this video isn't about outdoor plants. Next, I got this snake plant and I managed to keep it alive for like 3 years until I accidentally overwatered her one time and then she died really soon after. Okay, so we're seeing a pattern here, right? Wrong. This is where the pattern stops. Jerome gifted me these orchids and I had mentioned how I don't know how to keep an orchid alive. But then Jerome's mom taught me how to take care of it. And it's actually so easy. Don't listen to those iced instructions. All you gotta do is place the plant near a window and bottom water every 2 weeks or when the soil medium is dry. And that's quite literally it. The orchids are still alive today and had bloomed after a year. And this was the moment where I believe I could save the world. No, but seriously, I thought being a plant killer was in my blood. But the only thing I was really lacking was patience and straight up education. Okay, so here is where my real plant obsession began. It started with this golden pothos my mom left outside. The sun straight up shocked the plant, and she's had this plant for like years. Me thinking I'm the avatar was determined to save this plant, so I learned about propagation. Propagating golden pothos is actually really easy. All you gotta do is chop up the stem, make sure there's a node and preferably a leaf. Stick it in water, leave it at a window, top up the water as it evaporates, and change out the water as it gets murky. After a few weeks, it will start to grow new roots and even new leaves. You can then transplant it to a medium of your choice. You can do this once its roots are 1 to 3 inches long, or when it grows secondary roots. I like to mix indoor potting mix with perlite and orchid bark. This just helps with drainage and sends oxygen to the roots. Okay, I know what you're thinking. Girl, what the heck was all that? Girl, that's the education part. I feel like once you understand propagation to its core, you'll start to understand the basic needs of any plant, and you kind of just go from there. Then I decided to be a silly plant mom, and I buy my first plant at the store. Jerome got me a small Ficus elastica teneki, aka variegated rubber tree, from Home Depot, and I also stole an aloe vera pup from my mom. I forgot to mention earlier that my mom also fried a spider plant along with the pothos outside, and I also rescued it. I just put the whole thing in water and potted it up. Once the pothos was ready to be potted, I was also obsessed with the idea of the plant's leaves growing huge, so I wanted to grow it vertically on a stake. But then I accidentally propagated her upside down, which I did not even know that there was a right side up. But apparently there is, so keep that in mind. And half of my wet sticks were also propagated upside down. It's fine, everything's fine. Joe's family was getting rid of a Zanzibar gem, aka ZZ plant, and a small form Monstera deliciosa. And I was really excited to take it off their hands because Monstera is my dream plant. I loved Monsteras. Okay, but like, why she look like that? During this time, I was so obsessed with learning about plants. I watched a lot of plant YouTubers like Plants by Melissa. She was the one that inspired me to grow a big pothos. And kill this plant. Basically a Monstera expert. Kill This Plant has a Discord server where you could ask for specific plant help, and others in the server or himself would answer. So naturally, I asked for some help. Essentially, I asked if it was okay to repot my Monstera. I asked if I should repot her because 1, the soil was very compact and Monsteras like chunkier mixes so that they could dry out faster and the roots can get some oxygen. I was worried it may have root rot because of the yellowing leaf and because Monsteras are also susceptible to root rot. And number 2, I was thinking of chopping and propagating her, but there was a new leaf coming in, so I wanted to know what I could do in that moment. He then asked me to do a light reading and concluded that the light I usually get in my room wouldn't be enough to do a repot because the plant needs a lot of light to prevent shock. So I bought a grow light, aka a cheap IKEA lamp with grow light bulbs. I've been hyperfixating on plants lately, indoor plants. I also decided to get a shelf for my plants under the grow light. I got a mechanical timer for the grow light so it can turn on and off at certain times on its own, and sphagnum moss for, you guessed it, my first moss pull. I didn't read the instructions, but I will just wing it like life. Sphagnum moss usually comes dehydrated, so you have to soak in water to use it. But the problem here is that I decided to soak all of it in water, and it was a mistake. Okay, maybe I'll make 2 moss poles. To start a moss pole, you have to fill the moss pole thingy thing with sphagnum moss. Then you want to fill the bottom of the pole with your mix. I chose to do equal parts indoor potting mix, orchid bark, and perlite. Then you bite the plants to the pole. I chose to do my golden pothos. Just make sure the side where the aerial roots are growing out is the side that is touching the pole. Then you backfill, and then you water the soil and place it under a light. For the extra sphagnum moss, I had to dry everything out before storing because I was worried it would mold. So I laid all the moss thinly around my room with the ceiling fan on. It worked, but my room smelled like fish. Some new additions are this dwarf Alocasia amazonica, and I learned how dramatic they are under stress because 2 of its leaves died the same night I brought it home. It had like 3 leaves that were dying and I cut it off. This is what it looked like. It was like... And Jerome got me this discount canna lily from a random nursery he took me to during one of our dates. She was literally 5 buckaroos, but she's so pretty. Remember that Monstera deliciosa? I cut off the yellow leaf, repotted her not once, but twice, because I thought the second pot might have been too big, and then I cut off the oldest leaf because she was curled, dried, and pointing upward. It wasn't moving towards the light, and it was already partially cut. Based off my research, the plant might be using resources to keep it alive, while the leaf itself may not be doing anything to help the plant. So she was left with only 1 leaf. And I learned about fertilizers. I used the Skults, I actually don't know how to say it, liquid plant food, because all you have to do is add it to the water every time you water your plants. And it's just so convenient for forgetful people like me. I learned that watering doesn't mean how much water you use, it's actually how often you water. So for example, this Alocasia amazonica likes to have moist soil, so I would have to water it more often than the Ficus elastica teneki, which likes to be on the drier side between waterings. And when I water, I like to bottom water and top water just to avoid hydrophobic soil. With the moss pole, you also want to make sure the moss is always moist. And you need to water it in the perfect amount because it can trickle down into the pot with the soil. This is a problem because you want the pot to dry out between waterings, but if it's always wet from the moss, it can lead to root rot. And this is honestly such a hassle, and I should have listened to all the YouTubers that told me that moss poles are annoying to maintain, and I freaking get it now. I really get it. Now time for some new additions. I got a large form Monstera deliciosa tie constellation. My dream Monstera is actually the elbow, but the tie is also so pretty. Looking back at this footage is actually so wild because she has grown so much, and I didn't realize how small she was when I first got her. This is a philodendron ring of fire pup I stole from my mom's plant. She was so tiny here. This is a Maranta, aka prayer plant, that Jerome got me. She was really leggy, so I decided to repot her, chop, and propagate. Once she was propagated, I'd stick her back into the same pot, just so we could have a fuller plant. Now I have 2 more to go. Bro, doing that was a struggle. I don't even know if I want to propagate anymore. I got this string of pearls. I had never seen this plant before, and Jerome and I thought it looked so weird because it looked like peas. So we decided to get it, and she had a very fun ride home. And this is the last plant I got. It's called Tradasantia Nanook. She was so pink and tiny, so I put her in this little ram pot. But this is actually my last plant for now because it's really easy to buy small baby plants because you forget how big they grow, and when they grow they need more space, and I simply don't have the space, but I'm really happy with my collection so far. Then I decided to rearrange my room. So I noticed that the plants under the grow light was not growing, probably because the bulbs I had were 8 watt, which is really ideal for 1 plant. I had moved most of my bigger plants near the window, but they were sitting on top of my desk, which made them happier, but made my desk unusable. I decided to use the grow light solely for the moss pole, and I decided to move the shelf near the window and move my desk elsewhere, because nothing beats light from the sun. I think this is what I'm gonna go for so far. Remember the Zanzibar gem? Because it is a low light plant, my mom thought it meant it can survive in basically no light, and she put it in a dark corner. It then started dying, so I decided to repot her and separate her into different pots and move them to sunnier spots. As I was doing it, I quickly realized that the pot she was in had no drainage holes, which led to all the rhizomes to rot. Zanzibar gems can survive with inconsistent waterings and low light conditions because the rhizomes store water for the plant. This plant was also super root bound. It was really a struggle to separate her, but I did it. Lastly, my biggest challenge yet. Literally a challenge that has occurred from the beginning of this video all the way to the very end. My Monstera deliciosa. So I placed her under a grow light. I repot her again into a smaller pot with a chunkier soil mix and chopped the oldest leaf. I move her closer to the window. I tried KQ paste. It has been months and she hasn't grown a new leaf. So, last resort, I decided to air layer her. Air layering is a really easy and safe process. Still risky, but mostly safe. Think about how we propagated the pothos cuttings in water at the beginning of this video. It's basically the same thing, but we don't need to cut the plant just yet. Instead of water, we also use sphagnum moss and a Ziploc bag. All we need to do is find the aerial roots, preferably 2 or 3. We get damp sphagnum moss and wrap the moss around the roots with a Ziploc bag. We secure it onto the plant, making sure it isn't a perfect seal because we need a hole for oxygen and so we could spray water into the bag to keep the moss moist. Over the next few weeks, the aerial roots will grow into soil roots into the moss, and once there is a lot of it, we can chop the plant and repot it into our soil mix. It's that easy, but also risky. It was ready to be chopped after only a month, which I've seen others take about 3, and mine had so many roots. After a week, I actually changed it into a bigger bag and added more moss because it was growing so fast. I then used a clean blade and chopped it. I needed to clean off all the moss because moss and soil have different drying times. It could impact future growth while it's potted. And then I potted her in my usual chunky mix. When you're potting plants, it doesn't matter how big the leaves are. The size of your pot depends on the root ball. Usually you want to go 1 to 2 inches bigger. Monsteras like to be slightly root bound, so I went with something small. And then I placed her at the window and waited and prayed she would grow a new leaf. And she did. She's actually grown too, and I potted the rest of her stem into different pots, and they also grew new leaves. So during the 6-month journey, my takeaways are, genuinely, you are capable of doing almost anything you set your mind to. Plants are easy, you just need to do research. All you need to know is how much light, water, humidity, and what kind of soil mix your plant needs. Everyone's home environment is different, but trial and error is key. But sometimes the best thing you can do for your plant is to simply leave it alone. Anyways, if anyone else is a notorious plant killer, I am confident that you can become a plant parent too. If I could do it, you could do it. All you need is a lot of research and patience. Happy planting!